Welcome to the Explainer. You know, when you think of Valentine's Day, you probably think of chocolates, roses, all that stuff. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on its secret history. And let me tell you, it's a wild story of rebellion, sacrifice, and one man standing up to a whole empire.
I mean, just look at this. On one side, you've got the Valentine's Day we all know today, a massive commercial machine. But on the other side, that's where it all started, a story of defiance against the Roman Empire. The difference is pretty shocking, right?
So you have to ask, how in the world did we get from there to here? How does a story about a martyr's execution turn into this global celebration of love, not to mention a giant money-making holiday? Okay, let's do this. We're going to jump back in time all the way to the Roman Empire around the year 250 AD. Rome was in the middle of constant war, and, well, the emperor was getting pretty desperate. So Emperor Claudius II, he comes up with this theory. He figures married soldiers make for weak soldiers. You know, if a man has a wife and kids at home, he's probably not going to be as eager to charge into battle. So he makes this incredible decree. He completely banned marriage for all young men in the Roman army. But while most people were too scared to say anything, there was this one guy, a Christian priest named Valentine, and he saw this for what it was, not just a military rule, but a direct attack on love itself. For him, marriage was a sacred right, something given by God, not something an emperor could just take away. And so, he decided to do something about it. In secret, under the cover of darkness, Valentine started performing marriage ceremonies for these soldiers and their sweethearts. Every single ceremony was this quiet little act of rebellion, a small win for love against the power of Rome.
Of course, secrets like that don't stay secret for long in a place like Rome. Valentine was eventually caught, and he was dragged before the emperor himself. Claudius basically gave him an ultimatum. Either you give up your faith and stop the marriages, or you die. And that quote, well, that was his answer. A simple, powerful statement that pretty much sealed his fate.
All right, so now we're going to move to his time in prison, because this is where the story really starts to shape the tradition that we know today. Even locked up behind bars, Valentine's story was far, far from over.
Now, here's where things get kind of legendary. The story goes that Valentine actually became friends with his jailer, and this jailer had a daughter who had been blind her entire life. It's said that through his faith and his prayers, he miraculously restored the girl's sight.
But even a supposed miracle couldn't change the emperor's mind. The execution was set for February 14th. And on his very last night, Valentine didn't write some grand letter to the emperor or to the church. No, he just asked for a piece of paper to write one last message to that young woman he'd helped.
And at the bottom of that note, he signed off with these 3 simple words. I mean, he could have had no idea what he was starting, right? He was literally creating what would become the most famous sign-off in the history of romance. The very first Valentine was a goodbye letter from a prison cell.
So after he died, Valentine was known as a martyr, a saint. But over hundreds of years, his story started this slow, really fascinating shift from this solemn tale of faith into a global celebration of love. So check this out. For centuries, his feast day, February 14th, just existed. Then, in the Middle Ages, the famous poet Chaucer wrote a poem connecting the day to birds choosing their mates. And that idea caught on. People started writing love letters. We even have the first one, written in 1415, by a duke locked up in the Tower of London. Then, boom, the 1840s hit. The Industrial Revolution makes it possible to mass-produce cards, and the holiday just explodes.
And when I say exploded, I mean it. Just look at this number. That's how much is spent on Valentine's Day every year, just in the United States. Think about that. It went from a secret ceremony held in the dark to a massive $25 billion economic engine.
And here's where all that money is going. We have come a very, very long way from a simple handwritten note. The holiday is now an absolute commercial powerhouse, fueled by billions of dollars spent on jewelry, flowers, and chocolates.
But what's really cool is how its meaning has changed in different places around the world. In countries like Finland and Mexico, it's a day to celebrate your friends just as much as your romantic partner. And get this, in the Philippines, February 14th is a huge day for mass wedding ceremonies, which kind of brings the whole story full circle, doesn't it?
So, all of this brings us back to the most important question. When you strip away all the spending and the social media posts, what's the real lesson from the original story of St. Valentine?
Let's be honest, for a lot of us, the modern holiday can feel like it's all about pressure, right? Pressure to perform, to buy the perfect product,
But when you look back at the original story, the values are completely different. It's about having the courage to make a real connection and being willing to sacrifice for what and who you believe in.
So maybe the best way to honor the real spirit of the day is to focus on that genuine connection. It's about celebrating every kind of love. Love for your family, for your friends, and yeah, even for yourself. It's about being brave and sincere.
So as we finish up, just remember that priest who chose love over fear. The real story isn't about what you buy, it's about what you're willing to express. So, this Valentine's Day, the real question is, how will you choose to show your love?